Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio. Happy fall equinox. Today, I have two special guests, and we're going to talk about a book that if you were alive in the 80s and a child in school, you might have seen at the Scholastic Book Fair, called Lucky 13 in the Teen Witch series, written by Megan Barnes, who I could not track down who this person actually is. But I will give you a brief synopsis from the back, and then we'll jump into the show with our guests. She never expected this. Sarah Connell thinks of herself as a perfectly normal girl until the Halloween she turns 13 and finds out the truth. She's a witch. At first, Sarah is freaked by the news. Then she begins to wonder about the possibilities. Can she make a love potion to use on cute Cody Rice? Will school be a snap from now on? Will she be able to get anything she wants? Sarah has a lot to learn as she discovers when spells start going wrong and things get hilariously out of control. Good grief. Whoever thought it would be so hard to be a teen witch?
Good grief.
So that's our book for today. And joining me are Gemma Snow and Dr. Angela Sutton. And Gemma's been on the show before. Angela is a new guest, but as tradition with these bonus episodes, I'm going to have them introduce themselves.
Well, I guess I'll start. I'm Gemma Snow. I write contemporary, historical, paranormal, erotic romance, books where women win. It tends to be my foray. So I'm really excited to talk about teen witches today and all the paranormal witchy things coming up for the holiday in the next few weeks.
Yes. And I love Gemma Snow's books. Hi, so I'm Dr. Angela Sutton. I'm a historian by trade. I work at Vanderbilt as an assistant research professor of the communication of science and technology. That is a really long title, but just a way of saying that I am super interested in what science and technology can do for us and how we understand that. Among other things, I also work with Fort Negley in Nashville. I have a book on pirates coming out next month, so I do all the things. But what brought me here today is my friendship with Victoria and Gemma. We have a really fun way to unpack a book that I haven't read in 25 years. And I cannot wait to see what they think of it.
So Angela picked our book. When I asked them if they wanted to do this, and I was like, guest gets to pick the book. And Angela's like, yes, I bought this book at a garage sale in the 90s. I want to read this book. But because we're who we are, we decided that Gemma and I would read it, but Angela would not reread it. So Angela is going on 30-year-old memories of this book, or almost 30-year-old memories of this book. So Angela, in the spirit of that, would you like to tell us what happens in this book?
I'm going to try. I'm going to try my best. What stands out is, look, first of all, the cover, people can't see because we're a podcast. So let's talk about this cover, because we found it based on the cover. I didn't even know what it was called, but I just remember I was like, it's bright pink. There is a bed. There is a girl dressed as a witch sitting on it. And then she's got her cute little friend in a cat costume, like up next to her. And just through that search, we were able to find the book. So it's a very unique cover. And I think that's what must have called to me when I was, I was probably 13 when I picked it up from a garage sale, and it was already tattered. And one of those scholastic books that, you love when you're a kid that you don't expect much from, but you somehow sticks in your brain forever. And so I picked it up. And what I remember is that it was ridiculous. Even as a 13-year-old, I remembered it was ridiculous. So there's this girl named Sarah Connor, as we said, and she's in love with a man named Cody Rice, which is such a strange name for the 80s. Like, who was named Cody Rice in the 80s? I feel like we have Cody Rices now, and I would like to apologize for laughing at their names my whole life. I'm sure you're all very lovely, Cody Rice, Cody Rices. So she's so super into this boy, and like they didn't feel like a good match, because he was like super sporty and like just like a jock and kind of like superficial in a lot of ways, I guess. But turns out, there's more depth to him, thankfully. And I remember Sarah was more like the typical, like, well, I don't know. Sarah was weird because she was obsessed with tangerine ice lip gloss and whether or not that was fashionable. And I remember because literally it was like on every other page, and like it, like even now. I'm like, should I buy tangerine ice lip gloss? Maybe I need it too. Like a Gemma shaking her head. No, do not buy the lip gloss. Yeah. So, and so she somehow gets these powers, or she goes to someone to learn, or maybe there's a book. I don't even remember how she learns this, but she has this spell. And the spell, for some reason, is made up of herbs that her mother keeps in the kitchen, which I know some witches like, there's some overlap between culinary and magical herbs. But this is like some like old dried ass like celestial seasonings tea and like marjoram. Like this is not it's just really funny the way she's like putting this together. And then she decides to mix it with sugar into a lemonade. And this lemonade's got these little floaties in it, these little chunks. And she's like giving it to this guy. And somehow he drinks. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I see, I wish that you could just write books like this now. Like, I wish you could just write whatever the heck you wanted to and just make the other character okay with it. Like, you didn't have to actually like apply any sort of logic to the real world, from the real world into your books. But anyway, so he drinks this chunky ass lemonade and then he falls head over heels for her. And he starts like writing her poems and then like stalking her and coming to her window, I think. All the while, her little cute friend is like Willow from Buffy and is just like, Sarah, maybe we should not do this. Like, maybe this is a bad idea, Sarah. Perhaps we should just be normal teenage girls and do normal teenage girl things like self-actualize. And Sarah's like, no. And I don't remember how it ends. I don't remember if she and Cody ever get together. I don't remember if Cody's love spell ever dissolves, if she can reverse it. I have no memory of that, but that tangerine gloss is stuck here.
That was an excellent version of the story from 30 years ago.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
But I'm impressed by how much stuck in your brain. Victoria's laughing. This book is hard to read. It's a little tough to read. Specifically because what Angela was saying, they just did things and there were no consequences for the things that they did. Nobody pushed back against the things she was doing. But
wait, how did Sarah know that she to do the spell? Like, who taught her, or like how did she learn about these herbs?
So she has some weird things happen. Like, she knows that the tangerine lip gloss is in her sister's shoe and her sister accuses her of stealing it. And then something else happens.
I tried to count how many times they specifically referred to tangerine ice lip gloss, and it's like solidly 10 in the first 3 pages.
Oh, and then they're standing in the lunch line and she's like, I really wish we had pizza today instead of like the list of mystery meat dishes they had.
Squishy tuna surprise. I remember
the squishy tuna surprise.
Squishy tuna surprise. Because what school would serve that to people? I
don't know. We had pinto bean pie on Fridays at my school, so who knows? And then she says that, and the kitchen suddenly breaks down, and they order pizza, even though they're standing in line for lunch. You kind of assume, like where we said, like food's already made.
Okay, so what you're saying is that she is an actual, somehow biological witch. She has some sort of DNA.
On her 13th birthday, she gets her witch powers.
Right.
So that's the whole start of it. And you start getting these little like things that are happening that are inexplicable, and she can't figure them out. And then she turns 13. And it turns out that her very, very gay-coded aunt is also a witch.
Yes.
And I say she's gay-coded because she is single and owns a bookstore / tea shop.
With an apartment upstairs.
Yes.
Dream.
Honestly, like I would also like to own a bookshop / tea shop and not be married.
Is this aunt single? Is she single?
Yeah, she's super single. And her name was Pam. And Pam is just, I'm sorry, very queer-coded name from the 80s. But yeah, so the aunt does a very like lackluster job of being like, so by the way, you're a witch, but she does
have responsibilities, but I'm not going to tell you what they are.
She definitely latchkey kids this kid about teaching her witchery. So she's like, you have to be responsible. But every time through the book, Sarah does something irresponsible. She's like, you shouldn't do that. And that's it. There's no consequences for her actions.
And her way of training her is saying, because, in the bookshop, obviously there are witchy books. So she says, this lower shelf here, you should start here, which includes a book that has the love potion in it.
No, you don't give teenagers that.
She lets her take the book home and she's like, go through the potions.
No.
I do remember in the scene when she's making the potion, her brother comes in and is like, the kitchen smells like curry. And it was a little like, okay, so what exactly is she mixing from this cabinet of mysteries?
And it's black and powdery.
Yeah, and I don't know. I do a lot of baking. Just adding sugar to something disgusting just makes it sweet and disgusting. It doesn't actually make it taste good.
I'm trying to imagine curry lemonade, and it's not really... I mean, it could be interesting, but I'm guessing not.
Probably not the way she makes it, because exactly like Angela said, she just literally opened old tea bags and dumped them into this mystery thing. And the boy that she liked before Cody, who she met one time,
whose name is Kirk Tanner.
No, Kirk Tanner.
Tanner.
Yes. Kirk Tanner. And then the thing with Cody is she falls in love with him in like the teacher's lounge. And she falls in love with him. And it turns out she had a hot chocolate mustache when they first met. She's so embarrassed by this that she erases his memory of the time that they met. Not just of the first time they met, but he has no recollection of who she is at all. And then she goes and tells her aunt. Her aunt's like, this is why we practice responsible witchcraft.
Logically, what happens when you erase someone's memory with your witchcraft? That's what I'd like to know. I feel like we should be more concerned for Cody.
Okay, so this is also like from a practicing witchcraft perspective, right? Like, it's a fiction book, so we don't expect it to be real magic, right? But her magic runs the gamut from I can erase someone's memories to I need a love potion to make someone fall in love with me to I can astral travel to the library during a test and open a book and have eidetic memory of what's in the book.
I forgot about that section.
Yeah, it's real weird. I mean, like the witchcraft gamut here, like
it's impressive. She is advanced.
Overpowered for 13-year-old.
And she has absolutely no idea how to use her powers because every time she goes to talk to her aunt's kind of like, it's just a witch thing. And it's like, Pam, teach your 13-year-old niece how to do witchcraft.
Also, there's no discussion about the fact that Pam is obviously either her mother or her father's sister, right?
Right.
And so why is no one else in the family a witch?
Her mom doesn't know. Her dad is a doctor and obsessed to the point where she kept mentioning on the page with making healthy recipes. And so you just hear a lot about like bran muffins and cauliflower cakes and things like that.
Oh, that was just an 80s thing. Like everyone in the 80s is obsessed with bran muffins.
But so the story goes where she has this huge crush on Cody. She drugs him. And then he starts love bombing the hell out of her. Like,
could not get enough of her curry lemonade.
Obsessively loving her. Like today, right before Snapped kind of stuff. Right?
Oh.
Like, really intense for a 13-year-old boy to be taking her on these dinner dates and dancing in the city. And you're like, how are they getting there? They're 13.
And flowers and...
And she's like, please leave me alone. I don't want to be this intense. And he's like, you are the love of my life. And she's like, aha, I may have made a mistake. But she doesn't actually say that. I, as the reader, was thinking it. But at no point in Sarah's mind does she think she's responsible for her actions.
Oh.
No, doesn't her friend say it?
Well, her friend doesn't know. She doesn't tell her friend she's a witch until almost the very end of the book.
Shit, I completely misremembered that.
Yeah, she keeps it secret.
I just retconned Willow into the book is what I did.
She keeps it secret until the end. But the thing I think that was interesting is reading this. So like, and Gemma and I were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, is that, the characters are 13 years old, right? So you assume that like tweens are reading this book, like 10, 11, 12, 13 is the advanced age at that, right? So it's not really aimed at 13-year-olds. It's aimed a little younger. And it came out before The Craft, right? So Craft was what, 96, 97? Somewhere in there.
Something like that.
And all I could think about was the love potion from The Craft and like how very wrong that went, which included like, attempted sexual assault and pitching him out the window. And I was like, yeah, obviously this book is written for younger readers, but as an adult reading this book, I was like, he's going to assault her. Like it was just over the top.
It's definitely written to the point where like, if it were an adult book, this would be like barreling towards murder.
Yeah.
Like, fully barreling towards wearing her skin. But it's not even his fault because they met one time before she like magic.
Oh, and then they meet at like the salad bar at like the restaurant they all hang out. Yeah, that's when she erases his memory at the salad bar.
And then so that happens, and then she tells her aunt that this is becoming a problem because this guy literally somehow got into the city to overnight deliver her like 4 dozen flowers, even though they live in the same town. I don't know. Very love bomby, very scary. And then she's so fucked up with Cody obsessing over her that she forgets to study for a test. So she's sitting in a test, trying to take this test on the Civil War. And like Victoria said, she like transports herself to the library without leaving the room and studies the encyclopedia, goes in, aces the test, gets 100, and then the teacher asks her the next day to come up to the front of the room and talk about what she wrote in her essay.
Oh, I remember this part. And there's like this like automatic recitation where it just comes out of her mouth exactly like from the book. And it's like, could you imagine like being in the classroom and having someone like, what if their books were racist? Like, what if they were like those older Civil War books? Like, you don't want Civil War books just coming out of your mouth like that. You want to filter is what I'm saying.
Well, yeah. She can't stop herself from this word vomit situation. Her teacher gets super mad and is like, you didn't tell me you had like an eidetic memory or whatever. And she's like, I didn't mean to. And obviously she starts getting in trouble for all of these things, but it's never quite enough trouble for her to stop doing them. Like, she never really, and her aunt's like, oh, Cody's thing will wear off, and it just does. And the school thing just goes away, and there's no consequences through the whole book.
What? There's no counter spells? There's no counter magic? There's no like repentance?
There's no repentance. There's no learning from your mistakes.
None. Literally like 10 pages from the end, she like tells her friend, whose name now I'm just replacing with Willow.
Mickey?
Mickey.
I think it's Mickey, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She tells her friend, but she never has to like counterspell or sacrifice or anything. Cody's spell just wears off. And then the Civil War thing, I don't think there was any consequence for that. I don't think that there was any like, she just has to.
I mean, she gets a lecture about learning is about understanding, not just memorizing, kind of thing. But that's the sum total of it.
And then she tells Mickey, and Mickey's like, oh my God, you're actually a witch. No wonder you were acting strange. And that's it.
So there's no other plot besides it just winds down and resolves itself. How
and then there's like ellipsis, be careful what you wish for, which is the next book, which they really missed the opportunity to call it Be Careful What You Witch For.
You witch for, obviously.
But yes. But the other thing I thought was really funny about this book, reading it, is it is so late 80s. Like all of the cultural references, like it is cemented in the late 80s. I was trying to think, but there was one weird reference and I was like, okay, I think the person who wrote this is older because they said something about, oh, you two look like Mutt and Jeff. And I was like, okay, that is not Mutt and Jeff would be like a reference from my parents who were like Silent Jen, right? Oh. They were like a comedy team of like a really tall guy and a little guy. And like so I think the person who wrote the book either had to be older or had older parents, because I was like, that is totally out of line with all of the other cultural references. It was just really stood out to me that it was just really odd.
Yeah, she definitely made a like young Rob Lowe reference. And I was like, I mean, young Rob Lowe could get it, obviously, like we all know that. But like, it just is very funny to me that was like at the time culturally relevant and not like a reference to the past.
Yes. Like, yeah. Like,
I'm so glad Rob Lowe has a sense of humor about himself.
I mean, thank God, because otherwise he'd be insufferable. But yeah, there was just some funny cultural references. There was something about heavy metal and like, it was just like, okay, this is very 80s.
I think you're right, though, in that like the magic in this is just whatever the author wanted it to be for that scene in that moment. Because like if you're 13, you either got to figure all your powers come in like all at once and you have to figure out how to control them, or like your powers slowly ramp up and you have to figure out how to like strengthen them like a muscle or something. But like she can just randomly do a whole bunch of stuff without controlling it and then also not do a whole bunch of stuff. And then it's like, is it telekinetic, which is some of it when she erases his memory? Is it spell work? Like, what is the magic she's dealing with?
Yeah.
And then I just thought there's like a point where she like references how her mom can always read her thoughts. And I'm like, oh, is mom a witch? But mom's not a witch. Mom's just mom. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't even really know like which parent Pam is the sister of.
Where is the witch?
Like it never comes out and says, oh, my mom's sister Pam or my dad's sister Pam. So that was
my gay Aunt Pam.
Well, and the other thing like that made me think of like late 80s, because this was like about the time I was like in high school, right? Like she's obsessed with 17 magazine and fashion and all this stuff. And she cuts out pictures and she makes her outfits based on them. But she goes to school one day dressed in like surgical scrubs with a belt. And then she goes to school one day dressed like she's going to safari.
Is this like Spirit Week or just like
no? This is just her sense of fashion.
Oh, individualism.
She wants to be
she's
fashion designer.
Obviously a little weird to begin with, and then she makes a witch costume for Halloween, which is why there's a witch on the cover.
Yeah.
But she makes it out of black vinyl cloth.
Vinyl.
And I was like, okay, clearly this was a time before anyone would have thought anything weird about that.
The cover, I really wish you guys could see the cover because it's so 80s pulp, but also she's got this dead eye stare on the cover that is like she's looking at horrors from a former life.
Yeah.
And her friend's like playfully putting on her hat and like dressed like this cute little tiger. She's just like looking off into the distance.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I had read this, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say in the whole book, the joke is she never has a broom. Why does she have a broom in the cover?
Also true. But I think if I'd read this book, like as a kid, I would have been obsessed with her because I too dressed like a weirdo in high school and made my own clothes. And
to be fair, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, that's kind of on point for me. But I mean, my dad wasn't a doctor. I did not have access to a bolt of black vinyl. Let's put it that way. So
in the 80s, wasn't that a big trope? Like, didn't a lot of like the 80s, like individualist girls who were like not quite hot until they took their glasses off, didn't they all make their own clothes? Is that like a cool nerd thing?
It's like the whole Pretty in Pink thing, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Molly Ringwald. Mm-hmm.
I mean, also, like, she comes to the idea of dressing like a witch. Like, it's this revolution. And, like, she's like, oh, my God, I could dress like a witch. This is, like, well into her knowing she's a witch. And she spends the whole night being, like, dressed like a witch. And she's like, it was freaking me out that everyone kept being, like, nice witch costume. Like, they were going to find my secret. Why did you dress like a witch? You had a choice.
I think at some point her brother insults her and her friend because you're like, a witch and a cat. Like, how original.
Except her friend's a tiger, so it's like kind of original.
Yeah.
Like, there were also a lot of bullies in this book. Like a lot of, I don't know, I wasn't in high school in the 80s, but like there were just a lot of people that should have just gotten like beat up casually, like on a regular basis.
You heard it here first.
I mean, no, they were like really rude, and you're like, that would just, I would not let someone talk to me like that. Like,
yeah, Allison, when they're at the dance, the only kind of comeuppance Allison gets, the only comeuppance in the whole book is Allison, the bully. And it's because she like magically tips her grape punch onto her costume. That is the only comeuppance in the whole book.
Allison wasn't even a good bully. She was just mean to everybody. No one liked her. She just walked around being a bitch to everybody. And you were like, God. So you're not even a good bully. Like, you don't even have your little like group of people to bully with. You're just going around being mean. That's no fun. Yeah, I would also pour grape punch on your head a la Carrie style. Like, yeah.
Well, and one of the things I think is interesting too that I thought was funny is so she has this crush on Kirk Tanner, right? Who's kind of in her crowd at school.
He's a weirdo. He makes his own clothes, that kind of guy.
Well, he's just kind of on the edge of their circle of friends because they have another friend who's a boy.
Who's a major nerd. He does
a major nerd and like talks like a 40-year-old man.
Yes. And he has glasses, so you know he's a nerd.
So you know he's a nerd. 80 signaling, you know. And so when she discovers Cody Rice, she just forgets about Kirk Tanner, and her friends are kind of giving her shit about it, but not really. And then after all the stuff with Cody Rice, well, Cody also confronts her when she's sitting with their friend who's a boy at lunch and freaks out and gets jealous because she's sitting with another boy.
Yeah.
And she's like, he's my friend. We've been friends since elementary school, you know, and that was part of her. Like, maybe he's not so cool, the Cody Rice thing. But then at the end of the book, she's kind of back on Kirk.
She gives him a magic feather so he wins his track meet.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out he didn't need the magic after all. He didn't need the magic feather. But all I could think was like, again, bad, unresponsible magical witchcraft practices. There's now just a magic feather hanging out somewhere that he dropped. And there's a magic feather in the wind. What will happen to the person who picks up the magic feather?
I mean, maybe that's
the sequel I want to read. Yeah.
Yeah, so she and Kirk kind of have a thing, but he's like a little bit cooler than her group, right? Like he's the captain of the track team and also the newspaper, like I guess editor or whatever. Yeah. The I guess you could say the book is good because it passes the Bechdel test, but kind of against its own I don't know if it's good.
There's a woman bullying another woman. That bell test passed.
Because they're being so mean to each other.
Yeah. I mean, there are best friends who talk about something besides boys, and they both have names.
Yes. And she has a sister who's really unlikable. The problem was Sarah was also really unlikable. Like, you don't really want her to be a witch because you're like, I would be a way better 13-year-old witch than you.
I believe that.
Right? Like, you know, when you're sitting in your room and you're 13 or 12 and it's like the summer before school starts and you're like, oh my God, if I were to be a witch right now, I'd be so good at it. Like, this is obviously.
I was the queen of light as a feather, stiff as a board in some
yes.
parties. Like, 100%. I brought the Ouija everywhere.
So creepy. I have definitely had stories of that game. But like, she was not good at being a witch. She was unresponsible and unimaginative. Irresponsible. I know words.
Yeah, I mean,
she's like really unlikable.
I mean, I kind of get the 13-year-old love potion kind of thing, but I just kind of feel like if Pam is a mature adult witch, the first thing out of her mouth would have said, you cannot impose yourself on someone else's will. You can't erase their memories and you can't make them love you. That's not a good idea.
She told Pam she had memory and Pam was like, oh no. Like, she didn't even tell him on the page. There was a reference to how Pam was like, don't do that anymore.
Yeah. So I wonder, like, is Pam secretly like just about the chaos? Like, I kind of wonder, like, does she?
She's a chaos magician. Yes.
She just wants to seed chaos.
She at no point ever teaches Sarah anything. Like, Sarah keeps going over there to learn about being a witch, and Pam's just like, I guess figure it out and don't come crying to me when things go badly. And then things continue to go badly. Yeah.
Maybe Mickey will be the, voice of responsibility in the second book.
I liked Mickey. Mickey was the only one that had a good head on her shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that.
Just like, you're being weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are.
Remember, we're teenagers. Let's do teenager things.
Well, and at one point she even says, when Cody is like taking up all of Sarah's time, she's like, do you want to hang out, or are you just going to hang out with him all the time? And I mean, she kind of calls her out on the ditching your friends for the new guy.
And she's also like, you didn't even know he existed a week ago. Why are you literally going on a 4-day?
He wants to spend his life with you.
She was like, you said I love you after 2 dates. And she's like, yeah, but they were 2 really long dates. And Mickey's like, no.
Oh, okay, then.
So one of the later books is called Witch, and I really want Mickey to be the switch. Then she gets to be the witch.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you said witch. And I was like, oh, which witch? Listen, yeah. I grew up in the early 90s and I had my fair share of like Charmed and Twitches and Halloween Town and all of those like teen witch books. And they were all delightful. And this one, I guess, predated them and didn't have anything to draw from because Sarah was not good at being a witch. Sarah was bad at being a witch. And I don't honestly believe she's going to get any better. Like, I don't believe we left her on a good trajectory.
Well, her role model is Pam, who doesn't care.
Mm-hmm. Pam's too busy running her gay apothecary. Like, leave her alone.
Yeah, Pam's like, I don't have time to, bring you up in the way you should be brought up. I'm just going to let you read these random books that have spells that you shouldn't be doing, period.
I sort of think of her, I think I'm just stuck in a permanent Buffy trajectory now, but I sort of think of Aunt Pam as the not Rupert, the other one, Giles's nemesis, who is like the chaos man, Ethan Rain, right? Mm-hmm. Do you remember him? Like, he's like the one who's just like, I'll just on Halloween make everyone become their costume.
That is a good reference.
That is a good reference, yeah.
He's a great character.
I don't know. Like, I feel like we got good witches before this, but they just didn't really use any of that reference.
Well, this is definitely pulp teen fiction. Like, I was really into the Bailey School Kids growing up. I don't know if you guys read any of that. It was like this type of book where like this group of kids would always find paranormal beings in their lives. So all the books were like, gym teachers don't do magic and like mermaids don't teach swim class. Like, that's what they all were. And they were really fun because like, it wasn't that serious, but maybe I took this book too seriously.
Well, and we're not the target market for this book.
Also true. No, do you remember the Zilpha Keatley Snyder books? They came out in the 90s after this one, and they were so incredibly good. There was the Egypt Game and Headless Cupid, and they were both about teenagers who were studying to become witches without the knowledge of their parents. And all these weird supernatural things kind of happen that are very unexpected. And it was actually like, there was a mystery as well. There were like bigger stories involved. And I remember how good they were. And this one, I think I only loved because it was so fluffy and weird in the cover. So the Caitlin Snyder books I really loved because they're really good.
I could totally see why like 11-year-old Angela was into this. Like, like I really can. And I'm sure if I were to go back and read other books that I read growing up, I'd be like, you had to be a specific person at a specific age for this to like hit the way that it did.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I have to say that like for listeners, I ordered a copy for Ruby and sent it to her, and I ordered a copy for myself. And Ruby wound up with the one that actually looks pretty decent, and mine looks like it was well loved and kept under someone's pillow. But there was something about like seeing that Scholastic logo in the corner that just like brought back like the smell of the Scholastic book fair and like just being able to buy books that were like $1.50.
This one is $2.50. I don't know. Was that a lot for the time?
I don't know. I mean,
it's a little thicker.
Yeah. $2.50 though. I mean, can you even buy a new book, any kind of book for $2.50? Mine says that somebody sold it for $0.25 later. There's a little penciled in 25 cents.
I love those book artifacts when you get used books and there's like someone else has left their business card in there or like left or like the little sticker from the used bookstore. Love that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, this one sold for $1.79. Was that more than you spent on this?
Yes, I think I paid $7.50 for both.
They're antiques now. They have like what quintupled in value. Amazing.
Yeah, we'll do a giveaway on the Instagram.
Well, we were joking. If we do a giveaway, you're going to get my very snarky commentary on the first 20 pages of this book.
Did you pencil in the margins?
I did. I wrote the aunt is queer coded. Pass it on. To see it's right there. Because she really was. I mean, she wore patchwork vests. Like, come on.
No, and she's got like the first time we see her, she has like on a floor length skirt and a Victorian blouse with a cameo brooch.
Oh,
like very like Laura Ashley kind of 80s.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not practicing, but Victoria, I would say like the witchery is not very responsible in this book. Right?
No. It's also like I am all for fiction magic being big special effects magic because real magic is not exciting on the page, really. Right. I mean, and it depends on what you think magic is. I mean, different practitioners will have different ideas about that. And some people have really profound experiences, but you know, like as a brand new practitioner, she can astral travel and probably bend time based on what happens in that piece. She can change someone's memory with just thinking about it. And she can do a love spell with crap from the kitchen that's probably 20-year-old celestial seasoning that actually works. And I'm like, okay, so what are the rules of this magic? Like, you know, in a book, I want a magic system to have rules and that magic is not always the thing that advances the plot, right?
Yeah.
And so this is almost entirely the plot is advanced by the fact that she completely can do whatever she wants as a witch with no responsibility.
And no control over it. I mean, it doesn't seem like she has any control. With the exception of actually making the spell, everything else seems to be kind of accidental magic.
Yeah.
And then she like memorizes the whole Encyclopedia Britannica to talk about this.
I mean, honestly, of all of her powers, that's the one I would want.
Yeah, seriously.
It makes citation so much easier.
Yeah. So tarot who? Not me.
Although I will say, if I got told I was a witch, like I always, when I read the Harry Potter books growing up, they'd all be like bitching about their homework. And I'm like, you go to a magic witch school. I will do my homework every night. Like I would be like Hermione in the dungeon, be like, I don't care what I'm learning about, like the ancient goblin rebellions or whatever. I will do my magic homework. Right? That'd be so fun.
Yeah. And I mean, think about like this. So like this book would have come out about 10 years, right? Before the first Harry Potter book.
First Harry Potter book, I think, released in like 1994. So I grew up with the later Harry Potter books. Like I am the age of the characters in those books. So they really hit me growing up. And obviously they're super problematic and worth like analyzing now in context. But at the time, what they were doing for readers and for the YA genre in general was like really revolutionary.
Yeah.
which is part of the reason it sucks so bad that we can only read the ones we've already owned and can't spend any more money on them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think about like the YA, like paranormal, magic, witches, vampires, werewolves trend that hit about, because then you have Twilight, which I guess hits a little later than Harry Potter, right? Because it's closer to 2000 when those first books
when
came
I
out.
was in high school was when Twilight was really becoming like hitting.
Yeah. So it's, and I mean, I was not a Twilight mom, and I was really too old for the market of Twilight when it came out. But I just remember like reading the first one because everybody I knew had read it and be like, wow, like one of them is emotionally abusive and the other one's physically abusive. And this is what we're telling girls. You know, like the magic didn't even hit for me because I was so distressed by the story. And I was
There's
like,
a lot
okay.
distressing about the Twilight series. Like Harry Potter absolutely should be analyzed because it's a relationship with a really problematic artist and all of that. But like at the time, it was relatively progressive for the way that women were being represented on the page and having agency and having that sort of like authenticity to their character and not just being a foil for readers to find themselves in like a teen relationship.
Yeah.
Whereas Twilight doesn't offer any of that and is super undercurrented with like problematic Christian faith. So not to do a hyper analysis of like why paranormal fiction, but to what came after. Unfortunately, Harry Potter could have been this really remarkable revolutionary thing today, and it's not.
Yeah.
Very angry.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends who are, you know, we're Potterheads who are basically like, I am employing the death of the artist. And as far as I'm concerned, Stephen Fry wrote these books. Like, okay.
He would have done a great job, actually.
Yeah. I mean, well, I always was a little salty that the American audiobooks were not Stephen Fry. That if you wanted the Stephen Fry audio, you had to maybe do something illegal to get those.
You know, they actually translated, I want to say the first 3 or 4 books into American English, and they didn't do a very good job of it. So there's like weird stilted dialogue for a couple of the characters because they translated like the vernacular of British English into American English. And you're like, why does this read so strangely? And it's really unnecessary. It like totally does not need to be done. So I think they stopped doing that. But.
Yeah. Well, I mean, warts and all with She Who Will Not Be Named. Like what it did for readers and I think for the book industry and all of that stuff, I mean, that can't really be brushed under the rug despite her later bad behavior. And
she saved YA. I mean, she really did. At that point, it was like these books were what was being produced. It was like the Goosebumps books on recycled newsprint and wood paper. And that was all that was left of the young adult publishing industry. And, you know,
but I miss the Goosebumps era.
I mean, listen, I loved Goosebumps.
I was obsessed with R.L. Stein. Obsessed.
I watch the Goosebumps show every year. But at that point, the idea of writing something for children, representing children in positions of power with responsibility and respect was really pretty revolutionary.
Yeah. And you get that like trifecta of like Harry Potter and Twilight, whatever. And then also the Katniss Everdeen books, the Hunger Games books.
So I actually, in my real job as a journalist, I worked on a really cool long form piece about how those books raised a generation of revolutionaries that ultimately turned back on their, like that ultimately started questioning where that power came from. And it was definitely like, if you're growing up reading books like The Hunger Games, you are going to question authority and you are going to question media. And it sort of became this catalyst for why Gen Z is so entrenched in civil work right now. And that's really neat. I mean, Harry Potter has a much more lasting like impact than just the words on the page.
I mean, I like to think that there are so many beautiful pro-trans activists who are trying to save lives and change hearts that got their start reading Harry Potter. And I hope that Rowling chokes on that knowledge.
And it's true. I think for a lot of young women activists, a lot of gay activists. I mean, for some reason, like not for some reason, it's obvious why, but like so many trans and queer kids really like gravitated towards that series and have been very much burned by it. But they've also learned how to advocate for themselves in this really challenging place. And I find that really fascinating. Like I talked to a lot of the folks working at the Sunrise Movement because they were like, oh yeah, I grew up with these books where people took their power back in a sort of a fantasy magical universe. And I think that's kind of cool. But then she had to go and open her big fat fucking mouth. So again, but the Hunger Games books too were really out of the realm of like just truly visionary.
They were really wonderful, I think, specifically because in the end you realize that the person who is held up as the goody, right, like President Coin, is just as bad, right? It's the problem is the hunger for power and the lust for being in charge of the empire. That's the problem. There's always going to be someone who steps up to do the same thing. So I think even though they sort of ended on this note that didn't feel very hopeful, it felt true to how the world is. And I think that's really important to allow children to see that so that they can imagine some way around that.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting because Angela and I talked about this off screen about like why other dystopian fiction that followed was not so effective. And it's really because it was not that kind of truth, right? It really focused on, and so much of the reason Twilight failed for so many women is because it was about this love triangle and it wasn't actually about self-actualization at 17. And if there's anyone who can self-actualize, it is a teen girl. Like I trust teen girls beyond all measure because I am on a journey and I'm going to figure out who the fuck I am. And all the dystopian, like the books that followed in the wake of Hunger Games focused way too much on the romance of it and not nearly enough on the parts of the Hunger Games that were truly revolutionary. So
well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the thing about the Hunger Games that I think was interesting is that, you know, not only is it this like truth about like President Coin and all that stuff that happens at the end, but like she and Peeta kind of wind up together because they've trauma bonded. Yeah. And she's really broken as a person and he's really broken as a person. And that's what being the revolutionary does to you. Like they are not in power at the end. They are broken people trying to raise the next generation, which still surprises the shit out of me that she would agree to have kids, but you know, whatever.
And in that creepy rebel town as well, the Victor's Village, like empty except for them. Ugh.
Yeah. And also the movies focused too much on the love triangle as well, which was kind of ironic. Even the fact that the book was all about using the love triangle to actually like cover up what was happening under the scenes. And it was like, this is what happens with media.
Yeah, I mean, Gail was like responsible for her sister dying. Like, how is that part of a triangle? How is that in any way a viable corner of a triangle? Like, he killed your sister.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, and that the thing that, you know, she tries to prevent by volunteering as tribute, she doesn't prevent.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, so tragic.
Ultimately. So.
Yeah. She loses everything except for Peeta.
So I have to say, I mean, I've been thinking about this, like in terms of like the book that we read and these kind of later YA books that come out, is that like, I don't know. I don't want to say too much like generationally about it, but like, I feel like you're right, like Gen Z had this better foundation. They had access to more information than we did. I mean, I think about, especially, I mean, me even more than the two of you because I'm older, but.
Yeah, we have 3 generations represented here, right?
I mean,
well, kind of. No, Gemma is a young millennial. I'm an old millennial. Yeah.
I'm like right on the edge of millennial.
The cusp.
Yeah. And
I wouldn't like, say Gen Z-er yet, but.
I'm a younger Xer, but solidly X. And we just didn't have the internet. We didn't have access to stuff. We had access to the Scholastic Book Fair, which was awesome, but
the best access.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, you're going to hear her here first on Victoria's podcast. We are bringing the Scholastic Book Fair back for adults. I will literally skip grad school to start this. No, I think that access to information is really interesting, though, because so much of those dystopian books was about how do you spread information about the rebellion. And so much of the fight from older, more conservative generations has been how do you shut down social media narratives? And it's because social media narratives are how we get out information about the rebellions. It's also a tool for disenfranchisement and all of that. But that access to information is so different for this rights movement than anything that's come before.
Yeah.
Getting off my soapbox.
I think it's a good soapbox. So that, I mean, I think about like, you know, I kind of just dip into TikTok. Like I haven't really invested in TikTok. But I think about like all of like, you know, in the witchcraft community, like people like kind of either like champion the TikTok witches or they kind of shit on them, you know, and it's not always an age related thing, but there is some of that. And again, I think it's that, you know, we don't like things teenage girls like, you know, we tend to denigrate that. But these people are building a community, you know, like of information and, you know, they're not just telling you where the missing stair is. They're also trying to call it out.
This is so interesting with 2 things that have been happening on TikTok, because I am a huge fan of TikTok. I use it for a lot of my like actual real life work. But there's been two things going on TikTok this past month, which is girl dinner and girl math. And a lot of feminist analysis have been like, this is not saying women can't do math. This is not saying women can't cook. What it's doing is giving one a universal experience light, which women are never allowed to have universal experiences. It disenfranchises them, or it disenfranchises us not to be allowed to have that experience. But what it's saying is women engage with these things socially. So this like one really great feminist analysis that I follow is like, or analyst that I follow is saying like women can do math. But what you're saying is the way that women engage with money has sociological implications, and girl math is connecting those sociological implications to our position as other beings in society, right? It's not sitting here saying, oh, women are so dumb. They think if you buy something extra and get free shipping, you're not buying anything extra. Like that's obviously not the case. But by having this universal experience, by undermining the traditional domestic role of making dinner every day and giving yourself like a charcuterie board for dinner, you are saying I am more than the sum of my parts in society. And that is so fascinating and exclusively the result of TikTok videos. Like, how cool is that? Again, I get really excited about these kinds of.
And then you have like Montana trying to ban TikTok in a state, which I'm not really sure how they're going to make that work. But, yeah, it's like it's an empowerment tool that freaks people out. That freaks people who don't want people empowered out.
The whole Tennessee 3 event that was happening, and Angela and I are based in Tennessee, Victoria's from Tennessee. The only reason that got national news is because it was picked up by TikTok outlets. The only way I found out about it first was on TikTok. It eventually got TikTok reporters who then pushed it out to traditional media outlets. And now we've got a major national discourse happening because of that disseminating information.
Gloria Johnson's running for Senate. Oh, I'm so excited.
I will be in the streets fighting for that woman.
Yes. Always fight for her.
Yeah. Of course, amazing.
That idea, and I think teen witching is so much part of that, is like, do we just not like things because teen girls like them? And how do we give it more credit so we can do a genuine analysis of these things, like Twilight, which deserves genuine analysis and critique, and Harry Potter as well, not just because it's teen girl related. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I listen to the discourse of people older than me and people my age, and I want to say Xers are more progressive across the board, but we know that's not true because Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz are Xers. I mean, so we're not all slackers. Some of us are right-wing nut jobs. But like, it's just this idea that always, millennials just got shat on for 20 years about how dumb they were. And now it's like the same thing with Generation Z. And I'm like, look, this is not, you pretend like this is news. I mean, Socrates was bitching about young people, like this is not new, but the power that they have to organize is new. And I think that genuinely terrifies people.
Absolutely.
They also smart in the ways that matter. Like you can say like that there's that boomer-esque meme that always goes around Facebook. Like you want to like really confuse a Gen Z or put him in a room with a rotary phone and the instructions written in script. And you're like, first of all, you taught us. So if we don't know something, it's because your generation taught us.
Right.
But second of all, you can't rotate a PDF. So if we're talking about the importance of knowing how to use a rotary phone versus modern technology, like I have friends that'll be like, oh, kids today don't know how to use a manual transmission car. And I'm like, but there are no manual transmission cars left. Right. So what is the fucking point of being like, kids these days, you don't know how to turn your car on because it's got a button. Like, get off our butts and allow us to evolve as people, right? Like you were saying, Socrates, there was this newspaper article from the early 1900s that was like, kids today don't know how to use blackboards. They're too dependent on paper and they get covered in chalk. Do kids today need to use blackboards over paper?
When's the last time you've been in a classroom that has a blackboard?
No, when is the last time I saw a blackboard? Who knows?
I mean, it's whiteboards and smartboards.
And if you didn't have a teacher who wrote on their smartboard, did you even really go to public school?
We didn't have smartboards when I was in public school. We still actually had blackboards when I was in public school. So.
But definitely things evolve. Like technology evolves and changes. And if you are not willing to accept that, then you have to accept the fact that you're going to get left behind.
Yeah. I mean, we don't still have people. I mean, I think about this like in the terms of it. I don't know what this has to do with witchcraft or this book. But I remember seeing something about, I was at a museum and there was this lamp that had like this huge mirror behind it and a handle on the top. And I was like, what is that for? And so there's this whole like, tag from the museum is basically like, so this was what, like in the old railroad times when they had these rural rail stops for mail or milk or whatever, there was a person who would stand on the platform and hold this out because they weren't electrified. The buildings weren't electrified. So they would have to have someone like actually stand out there with a lamp at night so the train knew where to stop.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, so that job no longer exists, right? There's no need for that. And that is just like this tiny sliver of like what technology does. It's just that that's happening in real time for most of us now in a way that I think, you know, like probably in the 1800s that didn't happen. Like it, even though it felt very advanced and like things were moving quickly for them, it's not at the same level as what we are now.
I mean, just the fact that the 20th century started with the invention of the airplane and then, like, not even halfway through led to the landing on the moon. Mm-hmm. Like, that is such a scale of technological advance in such a short period of time.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I understand why the olds are freaked out. And as I get closer to being an old, you know, I get it.
I think they're freaked out because they don't want to budge.
Well, yeah. And you don't want to accept that your time is done. You know, like that you are not the person advancing the culture. Like you can be. I mean, I'm not saying that there are no people above 50, you know, making strides and things. That's not true, obviously. And I do think there is a lot to learning from elders, but, you know, the bulk of movement is coming from younger generations because that's where the technology is moving forward. And those are going to be the people who come up with the technology that probably will help us with climate change and all of those things, you know.
I mean, it's something we've been talking about a lot because my background is climate change. It's what I'm studying right now. And Apple just came out with this big thing about what they're doing with their phones and how that technology is changing. And listen, if my 93-year-old grandmother can have an iPhone and send me photos that most of the time get to me, I think that you can figure out a lot of the technology. Like a lot of it is choice. But yeah, so all of that is to say, 80s teen WitchLit is representative of the function of society.
Yeah, so she was 13 and, you know, 88. She'd be a little bit younger than me.
Mm. And I think you would have been a much more responsible witch if on your 13th birthday.
Someone to tell me I was a witch. I mean, I didn't find out I was a witch until I was like 18. So
I always think about this. What kind of witch would I want to be? I don't know. Angela, what kind of witch would you want to be?
The kind who can responsibly memorize dictionaries.
Please, you would not be memorizing someone else's account of the Civil War.
She would be using it for citations about why they were wrong.
That's all I do all day, every day.
I will say, thank God I was not the encyclopedia at the library generation of writing book reports because I love the internet, man. She's my best friend.
Yeah, I mean, the book I'm working on now could not happen without the internet. There's no way I could do the research for this book.
No.
Yeah, there's no way I could do it without the internet.
And I'm so excited for that almanac. I want it.
It's going to be really cool.
Finish it so I can have it.
Working on it.
Readers, you should know every time there's a new holiday coming up, I go to Victoria. I'm like, okay, so how do I bless my front door? How do I prepare for the upcoming season? What do I make? Last time she told me I had to make a honey orange cake, which I had already made. So
It was good. Highly recommended.
So Ruby, what kind of witch would you be?
I always love the nature stuff. So I think the idea of the way that modern practices go is really tied into understanding where we all come from. So anything elemental, anything related to like giving back to the earth. But then again, my work is in climate change. So I guess that makes sense.
I feel like you would just process so much eco grief doing that.
Oh my God. I would just absorb all of the eco trauma.
And I think I called you Ruby instead of Gemma, but
that's okay. It's happened a few times. A few times. If you think about which of the names sounds more real, like a real person name, it's actually not my real name. But
I do like the idea of you as climate witch. I like that.
I'm working on it, blending all of these things.
Dr. Sutton can be our history witch.
History witch.
I love
my God, that's amazing. I'm gonna make you a shirt that says history witch. And if someone asks you to explain it, you're going to be like, if you don't get it, I can't explain it.
I will just hand them a copy of this book.
Obviously, we've got to a whole discourse about how teen pulp witch fiction is representative of the whole history of human sociology.
It was the girl dinner before girl dinnered.
That's
girl
right.
math, girl math.
Now I'm like, okay, now I want like witch math and
You should start that TikTok. That would be hysterical.
Witch math is paying for things and not currency. And I think we do need to go back to that society. Like, I will absolutely pay for the next thing in half a baked bread and 6 friendship bracelets. Like, let me go into Publix and be like, all right, here's the next novel in my book. Give me a piece of bread.
I have definitely paid for things with hot peppers I've grown in my garden. I grow like all of them.
Yes. No, like bring back bartering. Totally there.
There actually
totally
is a movement on TikTok to start doing that, which would require, I guess, the like stepping back from electronic money. But I would love to bring back bartering, but mostly because I want Victoria to bake for me. I want Victoria to cook for me. She's so good at cooking.
I mean, we can ship between California and Tennessee. It works.
I'll see you in 2 weeks. I'll bring some cookies.
That's right. Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah, I do actually get to see Gemma really
That's
soon.
going to be great.
It's actually at the Love and Devotion book signing in LA. It's in Ontario, California, and it's going to be so fun. And there's going to be like 80 readers and 80 writers there. Hopefully more readers than that. But I'm making Victoria come with me.
Which is a good time to plug. So Ruby or Gemma, whatever your name is, why don't you plug what you have coming up? This will come out on the fall Equinox. So.
Right. So I write all different genres, and the only thing consistent about them is that they are too steamy for grandma to read, and they all have women winning in the end. I say this, my grandmother is reading my BDSM cowboy romance novel for her book club, but that's its own whole thing.
Go Granny. Go Granny. All right.
I feel like that's a seed for like a whole new podcast.
Not your grandma's romance, but so I have a race car driver romance September release. That's a second chance race car driver, wrong side of the tracks, good girl, bad boy romance that's coming out. And it was originally released on Bella, and now it's going to be in print. And then for Halloween, I'm so excited. The race car driver one is called The Racers of Royal Oaks, and it's Link and Rochelle's story. I'm really excited about that one. But I have a Halloween book coming out called The House of Damocles, and it is a reverse harem incubus romance set in Scotland. And I had so much fun researching the history of like Halloween practices in Scotland and the Highlands.
And turnip.
Yeah.
Turnip. I've carved so many turnips in my life.
So many melting gourd faces. But they're acrobats, and they do an acrobat show about the history of the incubus, and she gets what she deserves at the end. Like, she gets what society owes her. Let's just put it that way.
Nice.
But Scotland and Halloween was just such a fun, spooky sort of like paranormal place. And I don't write too much paranormal, but that one was a whole lot of laughs. So,
and you have written some other stuff set in Scotland too, right?
Yeah, actually, I keep going back to Scotland. I have an education at Edinburgh, where that's under my other pen name, Holland Ray, and she hooks up with a Scottish history professor. Obviously, doesn't. I mean, Angela knows, right?
I had those, and I would not recommend that. It's not even the thing I was ever tempted to do. But
yeah,
fan fiction about Scottish history professors.
Listen, it's all fan fiction. I don't actually want to go to Montana and hang out with that many cowboys. Okay. And then I also have the paranormal that I wrote with these guys last year for Christmas, Cryptid for Christmas, which was just so much fun. I mean, like, you could take the girl out of Jersey, but you cannot take the Jersey out of the girl. And there is nothing like writing Jersey Devil fan fiction, Jersey Devil erotic romance to really draw you back to your roots.
Very true. And there is not a new cryptid novel. This year, but we are plotting for maybe one next year.
We are definitely planning a second iteration of that, maybe for a different holiday. Although I will say, I felt like I was really in the Christmas spirit with my Jersey Devil erotic fan fiction.
It is one of my favorite stories in the book. So yes.
I loved both of these books that these women wrote for that series. It was like so much fun to tap into sort of the fun of paranormal. It wasn't that dark. It wasn't that intense, but there was a lot of magic in that book, I think. And also, incidentally, we all wrote queer characters. I think there was one straight relationship in the whole anthology.
Yep. And that's with like a lizard person. So I don't think it counts.
Yes. So I don't know if the straightness is even that straight if you're hooking up.
That's right. Lizards probably don't have gender.
Not the same way. I mean, they all have like a cloaca.
He definitely had a human.
Oh.
There was something there that was human-esque.
Yes. Yes. If you have
An
not
appendage.
read A Very Cryptic Christmas, you should go check it out.
It's so much
Oh,
fun.
gosh.
I have 2 books in that series, and one of them was like very dark and trauma bonding queer lesbian North Dakota banshee romance, and the other is just sex with the Jersey Devil. So that's who I am as a person, wrapped up in 2 short stories.
I'm just glad that we pulled you into the paranormal realm a little more, and now you're like exploring it more. So,
and now I've got 4 incubuses just going down and dirty on this poor Scottish girl. She loves it. It's fully consensual, I promise. Anyway, I'm sorry. I totally digressed. Angela, please
no, it's all good.
good.
Angela, what have you got coming up?
I'm just simultaneously like, so proud of who my friends are. Also, like, how am I going to go after this? Why did I let you go first? So unlike Gemma, I do not have 15 books coming out. I actually have 1 book. It took me 15 years to write. So very, very different story. But, I told you I was a historian by training. So this is a history book called Pirates of the Slave Trade, the Battle of Cape Lopez, and the Birth of an American Institution. And it takes a really exciting pirate story, right? Like the end of the Golden Age. You have you have a whole fleet of pirates. You have them being chased through Africa by the Navy with this like zealous commander at the front, who is like very much like the naval captain from Our Flag Means Death. Same personality. Challenger Ogle is the exact same person as Nigel, same person. But yeah, so like they're being chased through Africa, and there's also this African king, but who goes by many different names, Junkfa or John Connie, as I call him in the book, who sort of is able to. He's a shit stirrer. he does what he wants when he wants to, and for just creates some amazing narratives everywhere, right? So this Battle of Cape Lopez happened in 1722. The trajectory of this battle determines the type of slavery we end up having in the U.S. So we end up getting chattel slavery. The British brought that over. Chattel slavery means that enslaved people in the U.S. were not considered human beings, did not have legal rights as humans. And I talk a lot in the second half of the book about what are the consequences of this battle? Like, what are the consequences of having lived with centuries of the dehumanization of people of African descent? So a very, very serious book, but you do get some really cool pirates at the beginning to ease you in. And if you're listening still, thank you so much. I've got a code for you. So got a discount code. It's GPFANDF30. So if you go to Roman.com, that's ROWMAN, that's the publisher. And if you buy it there, you can get 30% off. That code is GPFANDF30. So it should knock it down from 30 to 20 for the hardback. And I promise you, it's worth the money.
I am excited. I got advanced copy, and I have been skimming. I've had too much other stuff to read to dig in fully, but it's so good.
And watching her process, because I actually got to see her working on the first draft of this a little bit, just as the show Our Flag Means Death first aired.
Yes.
I don't know if you've watched any of that show. I don't know if you're as excited as all of us for the second season.
God, you have to right now. Stop what you're doing. Why are you listening to this? I mean, yes, this is the podcast, but go to HBO Max and watch Our Flag Means Death. You have another month before season 2 comes.
Yes.
So, yes, very queer, happy endings. But Angela kept making references to people that show up in that general vibe of piracy, which is really just kind of anarchy, anti-establishment on the high seas. It was just sort of delightful to watch her process, because I know how important this book is, but also she's delightful. So.
Thank you.
So Angela, I want you to do one of those YouTube videos where they have the historian talk about what's real in the thing, and do it for Our Flag Means Death. I want that so bad.
Is any of Our Flag Means Death real?
So much of it is. So much. Actually, on Instagram, I've got posts that I've put up about every time I see something that happens in the show that is real and that I've got like original research to back up. I stick it up on Instagram, the little picture and like a little explanation of like what they got right. So the show is incredibly historically accurate. And I know a lot of people might be like, well, we don't come here for the accuracy. And I agree, just like with witchcraft, right? With piracy, you don't need accuracy in fiction. Fiction is all about like emotional truths, and that's really important. But also, like, there's so much accuracy. They got so much right. I'm so excited. I really love it.
And not just the fact that all the pirates were definitely gay and like poly.
Definitely gay. 1,000% gay.
I mean, listen, I keep writing pirate books. I have a bunch of pirate books, and there's no way to write a straight pirate book. It's literally not possible. Like all of my pirates are queer in some way, shape, or form because piracy is so anti-society, like society, established society.
It's one of the only places you can go if you're a queer person and you're kind of stuck, right? Like everyone finds themselves a pirate.
And now they're witches.
Yes. And I will say, I love TikTok. We talked about this for a little bit, but the introduction of witchcraft as being a way of returning to like simpler sort of, it's a combination of cottagecore and spirituality that really makes it easy to take a step back from this very difficult period of history we're living in. And I know some of it's curated for social media, like everything is, but like it's so nice to see those videos of people mixing their simmer pots and blessing their altars. And even if I'm not a practicing witch, I still get to engage in that a little bit just for a moment. And I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that element of like online spiritual witchery. I think it's really, for all of us right now, we all need a break.
Yeah.
We all need to step back.
Sure.
And I don't usually do this on the show, but because I'm with friends, I'm going to do it. I also have a book coming out in November.
Yes. Tell us about your book.
Yes. So it is called Verona Green, A Book of Art and Magic. And it's the first book in the Verity Green series. Verity is a painter and an art restorer who can basically time travel through paintings.
So cool.
And there's like art world crime and some organized crime and lots of magic and a little bit of love interest. And I'm so excited about these books. And this is the first in a series, and all of the books will be based on a pigment color. So that's why the first book is called Verona Green. It is an ancient clay pigment.
Are my friends so smart and cool? I like love being around smart, cool women.
It's a lot of fun.
It is the best. It is absolutely the best. Well, thank you both so much for being on the show. This was so much fun. And despite the book not being the best read of 2023 for me.
How dare you? How dare you?
It was still really fun because I knew I was going to get to do this.
Goodreads Teen Choice Awards. I don't know. Is that a thing? Did I make that up?
It should be a thing.
It should be a thing. I'm going to make it a thing. And I'm going to make a Scholastic Book Fair a thing too.
I'm here for the adult Scholastic Book Fair.
Yes. Thank you both for indulging me in this one, because I just had so much fun listening to you talking about it. And now I really want to go back and read it just to laugh at
Do you want my copy? I'll give it to you for your birthday. You can have my copy. I had a really great birthday present planned for you, but maybe I'll just wrap this up and give it to you.
Perfect.
There you go. And if I do give away for the book, I'll do my copy because it looks so loved. It looks so loved. Someone really needs to continue to love it.
Or you could get mine with the very snarky commentary about tangerine lip gloss, which I just literally wrote number 6 for the 6th instance.
It's not go through with a highlighter.
As Angela put, you can find her on her website and her publisher's website. I am all over the internet, so just search Gemma Snow and we will hang out there too, because I love this kind of stuff. Talk to me about romance.
Awesome. Yeah.
We talk about romance all the time, and I could talk about women in literature forever. And I consider romance literature. I will fight on site for anyone who doesn't.
Amen. And I will polish your soapbox. Yep. Awesome.
Victoria, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you. That was fun.
WitchLit is a production of Thousand Volt Press and is edited by Julian Rashke. Our intro music is Cosmic Glow by Andrew Kay, and our outro music is Voices by Alexander Shanekar. Transcripts and all our previous episodes are available at witchlitpod.com, and you can follow us on Instagram at witchlitpod. Please help other witches find us by leaving a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening to and reading WitchLit.